One of the few positions open to women in the silent era was that as a so-called exchange girl. The job title itself was designated for women. They worked out of the film exchanges. The exchanges were located across the country, and they played a critical role in the industry. They distributed film prints to theaters nationwide. Working there, the exchange girls did critical work. Primarily, they inspected and repaired the prints that were frequently damaged by theaters. At times, some exchange girls made new film reels for release to theaters, first printing the footage and then assembling it into reels for screening, working at times in conditions of near darkness. Now, this is actually footage from a 1913 short drama called Evidence of the Film. This exchange girl finds the key footage, shows it to the police, and ultimately exonerates the man that they had thought committed the crime. Work in the film exchanges was incredibly dangerous at the time because film was highly flammable. There were numerous fires, including this one at a film exchange in Atlanta in 1915. What the headline fails to report is that 2 women were trapped in the building and died. This is reportedly the grave of Lottie Ham, who died at the age of 17. Women also did similar work for the Los Angeles studios. This is a promotional film from Thomas Ince Studios, and that, indeed, is Thomas Ince, his production team, camera operators, lighting operators, and set builders. All men. In post-production, it's men who were developing and preparing the film. But here we have the film inspection process. And this is a team of women doing very similar work to what we saw with exchange girls, working with footage, assembling prints, and putting it onto reels for distribution. They're not called exchange girls here, but they aren't working in a film exchange, but they're doing the same work as exchange girls did. Here we have a woman doing an edit with a cement and a razor blade. That's why they called their work cutting, patching, and joining. The editor, of course, who made the original cut, was a man. Now, MGM put out a similar film in 1925 showing their people and their teams that made their films. These are their directors, who like to smoke, the camera team cranking away. This is their production team, at work filming what they call a shot with a portable camera, which is actually just a lovely tracking shot, but not really all that portable by modern standards. All men filming women. And then they give us a brief look at what that shot will look like in the final film. They show us their musicians who play music on most sets. There's actually 2 women here, though one doesn't have an instrument. These are their carpenters and their set builders and set painters, and again, we see entirely men. But they give us a very quick look at what they call their release room, a team of women assembling prints for distribution that are sent to the exchanges. This was clearly work they thought women could and should do, though they are overseen by a man. The LA Times then reported such work was one of the few vocations open to women, and they were better suited for it than men with their, quote, greater power of concentration and infinitely more patience with minor details. They also show us their cutters, what today we would call editors. They make the creative choices for the films. They are overwhelmingly male. But if we look carefully at the bottom right, there are 2 women here. There were 2 women who were part of the MGM editing team at this point. Could this be Blanche Sewell, who edited dozens of films, including the legendary Wizard of Oz? And could the other woman be Margaret Booth, another filmmaking legend? She has 44 credits, including Camille and Mutiny on the Bounty. She was nominated for an Oscar for that. Now, Margaret Booth was a teenager when her older brother, Elmer Booth, was tragically killed in a car accident at the age of 30. Elmer was a known actor at that point, and he had worked for the director D.W. Griffith. Griffith spoke movingly at his funeral. He also offered Margaret Booth a job in the industry when she graduated high school. When she did, one of the very few jobs she could get as a young woman untrained in the industry was as a patcher, a film joiner. She described it like this. She worked with a team of other women in a laboratory, assembling 200-foot rolls of film into 1,000-foot reels. She assembled reels and inspected them. This is the work of an exchange girl, and one of the few avenues open to women to work in filmmaking. Margaret Booth used this entry point to start working, and she started her own career that way. She was not the only woman to do so. So Exchange Girl was actually an entry point in editing for women. Well, what happened to that position? It actually disappeared with the coming of sound. And sync sound is what ended that type of work. This is a 1929 promotional film from Western Electric about the coming of sound. And here we talk about the soundtrack print. With the soundtrack print, you combine the visual and sound. When a print was simply the picture, you could easily cut it. But once you have a soundtrack on that print, you can no longer do that.
Here are our 2 negatives developed. The next step is to print these 2 negatives onto a 3rd piece of film. We'll print the sound record first, and then the picture record. Here we have a completed sound print, and we are now ready for projection.
Any adhesive on the soundtrack print would cause an audio issue when played in a projector. With the coming of sound, prints were then manufactured by new and complex machines, a more technical process overseen largely by men. This change ended the work of the exchange girls repairing prints and those rooms of women assembling them with adhesives. Sadly, we lost jobs for women and a key entry point for them in post-production, the way Margaret Booth had started her career. Booth worked on at MGM. She was the first cutter to be called an editor. She later became the supervising editor for MGM, an immensely powerful and important position, one she held until 1969. No film came out without her approval, and such movies: Gone with the Wind, North by Northwest, Philadelphia Story, Singing in the Rain, and The Wizard of Oz, which Blanche Sewell edited. Sewell started her own career in a similar way to Booth, cutting and patching in a film lab as a high school student. Booth never sought credit or attention. In one of the few interviews she gave, the interviewer remarked that she hadn't actually said much about herself. "Well," she replied, "I don't think there's very much to tell." In another, she remarked, "Boy, was I tough." She was also so respected. A 1977 Film Comment magazine poll asked 100 editors to rank the top practitioners in their field. Booth was third. The following year, she received the first Lifetime Achievement Oscar ever given to an editor. She passed away in 2002 at the age of 104. She's buried in the Inglewood Cemetery alongside her beloved brother, who died 87 years earlier. Booth's career started with a tragedy, one that led to an opportunity, one she seized.